Welcome back, everyone. Today's video is all about the fall of the Jedi Order. How did Darth Sidious gain the upper hand on them? Were the Jedi really as devoted to the light as they believed? And was it truly too late for them to stop the Chancellor had they discovered his plot sooner? Let's dive in and find out. When discussing the Force in terms of light and dark, people commonly confuse it with black and white, as if there's a gray. The thing about light and dark is that it's on a spectrum. You could be engulfed in a room full of total darkness, completely blind to everything. You can't see your hand in front of your face. Your brain can't even process whether or not you're standing level. Complete darkness. But then you feel around in your pocket and you find a tiny, cheap LED pocket light. Suddenly, this small pocket light cuts through every unseeable void. Everything within your proximity is illuminated. No, this one light may not fill the room, but through this light, a pathway is reachable. This light is the Force, and the pocket LED is the Jedi. The Jedi exist in a manner to be conduits that allow the Force to illuminate the way. Keep this allegory in mind as we discuss the Jedi's failures and everything that was used against them for their deception. Instead of serving the will of the Force, they spent their time serving the Republic's political interests and believed that it aligned best with the will of the Force. Over generations, from the High Republic on, the two different wills were perceived as one. The marriage between the Republic and the Jedi Order was a slow forming one, but after generations of younglings saw the closeness of this relationship, maintaining it became paramount to the mission as they grew older. During the High Republic era, we experienced several examples where the Jedi heavily influenced the people of the galaxy. Feel free to go back and watch a few of my High Republic videos for context. During the Clone Wars, they lacked that level of influence because they are so influenced by the politics of the time. It became less about helping people and more about helping the galactic-wide government. The special abilities of the Jedi made them ideal candidates as military leaders during the Clone War. However, the Jedi Code walks a path of passivity. It's an unreliable ally during war. It's very difficult to live the middle ground. War meant that the Jedi were responsible for sentient life under their care, clones, enemy militias, regular bystanders caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. Palpatine knew this and exploited it. Spreading them far away from each other and putting them in situations that forced them to compromise their code dimmed their light. He even went so far as mandating Padawan learners to join their masters on the battlefield. The reasoning was to give the Republic every advantage possible. What it really did was take young children at their most malleable and skew their perception of the Jedi Code. Truth is, the Jedi didn't have a just cause to fight for during the Clone Wars. It was a conflict that innocently could have been solved through diplomacy. Had they seen it from this perspective, perhaps they could have seen Palpatine's treachery and shown the galaxy that he was controlling both sides. Strict adherence to legalistic rules drove them to a place where their hearts became rigid. Like all rules and laws, we are meant to draw a line between right and wrong. But what they leave behind, what made the Jedi so magical in the first place, is the compassion for the individual need. The true tragedy is that the Jedi during this time are willing to make the cold, unnecessary sacrifices and dress it up as the greater good. Keep in mind my allegory that I made earlier about light. All of these events are reasons why their light grew so dim. Serving the government over the will of the Force, agreeing to fight a war, agreeing to expose their Padawans to war, forsaking the individual in favor of the Republic's agenda. Without the light of the Jedi and the illumination of the Force, Palpatine was free to control the events of the galaxy without the Jedi Order's knowledge. The funny thing about light growing dim, it occurs gradually. By the time the light is fully dim, sometimes you're unable to recognize the fact that it's not as bright as it used to be. Therefore, there's no problem. Without the time and space to truly examine themselves and their own hearts, it was all but too late for them to recognize their weaknesses. The war had begun, and their only choice was to let Chancellor Palpatine define their role for them. By that time, their level of compromise had grown so great that they could have never discovered Palpatine's plot. The light had grown too dim for them to see the way. The Order's divergence from individual compassion, its yielding to political agendas, and its embrace of an unjust war moved the Jedi away from the will of the Force. So much so that it was necessary for what light they did emit to die out. It was necessary for the Order to fall because they couldn't go forward anymore. The time for introspection and change had passed. They had to start completely new. I believe this is why Obi-Wan and Yoda both had to die at the end of the original trilogy. They still represented this wayward era to some degree. And during a time where the Order needed a fresh start, light shined bright once again so that it would terrify the dark. How did the Jedi prevent this waywardness again in the future? Well, by focusing on what's true, what's noble, what's admirable. To always have the courage to follow the will of the Force instead of the galaxy's applause. to strive for ideals of love, peace, and balance. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you hear, please leave a like and subscribe. Take care, and may the Force be with you always.